Well, good afternoon to everyone. Today I'll be talking about the research what we have been doing in Karnataka at Indian Institute of Science. My second part of my talk will focus on the wetlands of Bangalore. I saw that Ramchandra Hebar had touched upon the some aspects of the lakes of Bangalore. I will skip that part when I speak. Okay. So now today I will be talking about what is sustainable development, why sustainable development is required. My view of sustainable development is if we can ensure clean and adequate water for our children, I would say we have attained the sustainable development. To understand that, I will take you to the Western Ghats. Western Ghats are hill mountains. In it also acts as a backbone to the peninsular India. It has numerous rivers and good vegetation and biodiversity. I'll be highlighting on that. Then I will take you to the Bangalore, the wetlands of Bangalore, how we are doing the monitoring and restoration of the thing, what are the things are required, what kind of data to be collected. I will highlight that. Since the focus of this course is on water quality compilation restoration, I would highlight on those aspects. Then at the end of my talk, the what kind of work we have done apart from being scientists, how our science has reached the society. I will try to highlight that through some of the case studies. Okay, I'll be taking about the 90 minutes for my presentation. Okay, so now let us go to the Western Ghats. As I said earlier, Western Ghats is a hill range from Kerala to Gujarat. This is on the western part of India. So there are numerous the trees. There are numerous rivers which are perennial. Because of that, we have the water security in peninsular India. Because of the water security, there is a food security also. If you look at the kind of the ecosystem what we have in Western Ghats, it gives an idea about the dense vegetation in some parts of the Western Ghats. Okay. Now, when you look at the number of species that are there in the Western Ghats, I know that you are all from the engineering faculty, but also some amount of knowledge of science also would help. So why this is important? Because I have met many engineers in the committees, and I have seen that this part of the knowledge is missing in them when they are doing the professional work. That is where I see that they think that river doesn't have the life, and they consider that as an entity. Now let us try to understand the science part of the Western Ghats. The Western Ghats extend from 8 degree to 22 degree latitude. Let us see what is the diversity of life in the Western Ghats. When I say diversity of life, diversity of plants and animals. Now, if you see that along the latitudinal gradient, the diversity of plants and animals, you see that highest number is along the 8 to 14 degree latitude. That means that corresponds to the Kerala and Karnataka part of the Western Ghats. This region has the highest diversity of plants and animals. Why this diversity is required? If there is a diversity in nature, you have diverse food, and because of diverse food you have diverse medicine, which gives the immunity, and that is what is evident in the recent COVID issue also. There are less instances of COVID in these villages of Western Ghats because the kind of the food the people take or from the nature, and because of the diverse food they had attained the immunity unlike people in the cities and the other areas. Okay. Now when you look at the nature is always in balance. So as long as the two-legged animal doesn't come into the picture. And also when you look at the nature, as a teacher and as a practicing engineer, we can learn many things from the nature. Say for example, if you look at this slide, here you can see all the plants are competing to prepare the food, and food is prepared. There is a competition, there is optimization, and no one is deprived of the food. So that you can learn the laws of thermodynamics through this, the energy and material transfer and law of optimization. Then the second thing you can learn from the nature is the remediation. You would have seen people washing cloth in a river. You collect the water sample at that location, and 500 meters downstream you collect the water sample, and you will notice that whatever the contaminants that are there in the water at the point A where people are washing the cloth, is not there at the point B, the 500 meter downstream. That is mainly because of the treatment that happens in the river, and these are done by the bacteria and the algae in the water body, the biological organism. We call this as a bioremediation. The bioremediation is one of the hottest topic in the globe today. The third aspect is the sustainability, as long as there is a renewability. The younger plants come and the mature plants disappear. Similarly, the humans also, you see the younger generation take over in the system. So that is where we ensure the sustainability in the system. If we are not ensuring the renewability in the nature or in the system, then we are not ensuring the sustainability in the system. So now, for you understood that there is nature is always in balance. The ecology, biodiversity, hydrology, and energy are linked to the people's livelihood. Now, to understand this, I will take you to one of the small experiment what we did in Western Ghats. So, if you see this slide, you can see that there is plenty of water here, but this is the same location. I do not see the water after 30 years. This is when I was a student doing a doctoral degree. This is, I used to visit the place and there used to be a water, but today there's no water. This could be because of the absence of vegetation in the catchment area. So that means as engineers, we need to understand there is a linkage between the vegetation and the water. See, the water sustenance in the catchment can happen only by having the vegetation of native species in the catchment. Now, to demonstrate this, I will take you to a river basin. This is a Sharavati river basin in the Western Ghats. This originates at Ambutirtha in Shimoga, traverses 128 kilometers, joins the ocean. If I ask civil engineer about a river, most of them will talk only about this blue line. They have completely forgotten that river has a basin or a catchment. The health of the basin or a catchment decides the water sustenance in the river. Unfortunately, that's why they go on concretizing the river channels and they kill the rivers, like Sabarmati, and the rivers in Karnataka also are concretized. When we concretize the riverbed, we are also going against the nature. The nature's, if you look at the hydrological drains, they have the natural function of groundwater recharge. When we cover that with a paved surface, concretize it, then we are they not allowing the groundwater recharge to happen in the region. Now, coming to this river basin, see, way back in 1965, we constructed a dam. With the construction of dam, we have a reservoir. Now in this reservoir region, there were villages earlier. Those villages were practicing the wet cultivation because the water was available. Now, during the construction of the dam, the engineers who are implementing this project, they displaced these local people forcefully to the drier belt. And the people who went to the drier belt, they were earlier practicing the wet cultivation. They couldn't continue the agriculture. So what they did is they waited for the reservoir work to be completed. The moment the reservoir work was completed, they just came back to the catchment area and they converted the forest area in this region and into the agricultural land, and today that has become the degraded area. Now let us try to understand how this has impacted the rainfall and the water availability. Probably this is the first time in the country the linkage between the water and the vegetation is demonstrated through this experiment. So now if you want to understand the linkage between the rainfall and the ground cover, so you take the data. Today you have 120 years of rainfall data in the country. Divide this data into two time periods, 1901 to 1965 and 1965 to today. Why 1965? Because the dam was commissioned in 1965. When you look at this rainfall data, when you analyze the data, you will see that during 1901 to 1965, this region was receiving the rainfall. The entire region was receiving the rainfall of 3,000 to 4,500 millimeters. But if you look at the current rainfall data from 1965 to today, you will see that the one portion, that means this side, continued to receive 3,000 to 4,500 millimeter, while this region started receiving 1,700 to 1,900 millimeter. The region is same, is undulating terrain. It receives the orographic precipitation, but now you will see the quantum of rainfall has declined in one portion. Now to understand this, let us use the remote sensing data. Ramchandra Hepar has talked about the data availability and temporal data availability. That means from the 1960 onwards, you can analyze the changes that is happening in the region. When we look at this, the remote sensing data through the land use analysis, you will see that wherever vegetations are there with the forest cover, you have a dense network of stream, while the region where agriculture or barren area is there in the form of orange or yellow color, you see the sparse network of stream network. So now let us divide this region into a sub-basin and try to understand in sub-basins what is the extent of forest cover and the rainfall. Now you see you have first order stream, two first order stream joins and form the second order, then form the tributary. Cluster of streams form the tributary. Let us delineate the sub-basin for each of the tributary. Now you have sub-basins on the western side, these are the western side, these are the eastern side. Let us look at what is the extent of forest cover on the eastern side and what is the rainfall. See, now when you look at the forest cover in this eastern side, 30% forest cover, rainfall is 1776, or 41% 1715, or 46% forest cover 2157 millimeter. Now when you look at the western side, the forest cover is 65%, rainfall is 4800, or forest cover is 60%, rainfall is 4400. That means the orographic precipitation, the rainfall is dependent on the extent of forest cover in these hill ranges. Okay. Now we also try to analyze how long the water is available. See, one is the quantum of the water. The second is the amount of the water that is the the amount of water that is available to the people in the region. So for that, what we did is we selected the streams in this region. We monitored the streams for 36 months. Why 36 months? We wanted to capture the seasonal variability and also the year-to-year variation. So in these streams, we monitor the quantity of water and duration of the flow. Based on that, we graded the streams as A, B, C, D. A are the stream carrying the water for 12 months, B are the stream carrying the water for 8 months, C are the stream carry the water for 6 months, and D are the stream carry the water only for the monsoon or the 4 months. Now if you look at where are the A type of streams occur, A type of streams occur when the catchment is covered with a native vegetation, the forest with the native species, the diverse forest species, it carries the water all the 12 months. While when we convert into monoculture plantation, in the catchment, either the rubber or acacia or eucalyptus, it becomes either 8 months or a 6 months. Now, when if we degrade the catchment less than the 40% vegetation cover in the catchment, we see that water is available only during the monsoon. So that is where the linkage between the vegetation cover in the catchment to the water availability is established. Now let us understand the science part of it. Before that we will understand okay, let us understand the science part of it. See, what we have done in this river basin is we deployed the sensors to find out what is the water that gets infiltrated during the monsoon, and also after monsoon how much water moves laterally towards the river or stream we have monitored. Now when the forest is cover is there in the catchment, because of diversity of forest species, you have diverse microbial species in the soil. Because of the diverse microbial the species in the soil become porous or permeable. When the soil is porous or permeable, it allows the water to infiltrate. So the water get infiltrated, it fills this zone, which we call it a saturated zone. Then it fills this zone, which is a vadose zone. Then after saturation of the vadose zone, we see a water flowing in the stream or a river during the monsoon. That means when you see a water flowing in a stream or a river in the monsoon season, in a catchment like this, you can also assume that enough water is recharged in the underlying layer. Now you have the water because of the monsoon for 4 months. During the post-monsoon, the water that is stored in this region moves laterally, and that's how you have the water for the next 4 months. During summer, the water that is stored here comes to the river or stream for the next 4 months, which we call it as a base flow. If you have read the hydrology, the textbook, you would have come across the terminology base flow, so the subsurface flow, etc. Now the 4 months because of the rain, 4 months because of the water stored in the vadose zone, 4 months because of the water stored in the saturated zone, we have the water throughout the year in the stream when the catchment has the native vegetation cover. Now if you remove this vegetation of native species, which are diverse, with a monoculture plantation of rubber, that means a single species, the degradation of this the leaves takes a longer time, and because of the uniform kind of the texture, and also because of they release a toxin, the microbe in the soil becomes very poor. Because of that, the water infiltration might happen only in the Vado zone, and during the monsoon you have the water, and the Vado zone water, that means 4 to 8 months water you will get. When you convert this into the paved surfaces like the urban area, nothing goes inside. That's where most of the lakes in the urban area become the seasonal thing. That's only during the monsoon you see the water. Ramchana Bhatt had shown that some of the lakes in the Bangalore, the the drier situation in Bangalore. Okay, now if you have to manage this ecosystem, you need to have a physicochemical approach. That you have to maintain the physical integrity, chemical integrity. So then only you can have a biological integrity. What is the physical and chemical integrity? Let us try to understand with an example here. See now, for example, a river basin has a certain shape, or a river has a thing. People sitting in Ivory Tower in Delhi, if they think of river linking the river from Ganga to Kaveri, they are creating the serious mistake in their professional career, because the species that are there in the Ganga become the invasive species in the Kaveri, and also there is a lot of wastage of electricity, etc. So now, if you look at this carefully, you see this is a region where the water is available all 12 months in a year. This is the region where you have 8 months, and these are the yellow color is the 6 months, and these are the 4 months. Now, if you look at the forest cover in the region, wherever forests are native forest with a diverse species, you have the water throughout the 12 months. Wherever the monoculture plant, where the native forest is degraded and monoculture plantations are planted, you have 8 to 6 months of water. Where the degradation is with the forest cover lower than the 33%, you see that the water is available for months. That's where the scientifically we say that the forest cover should be minimum 33%, or they more than 33% to sustain the water and also oxygen level in the region. Now, hardly the people have understood the science of it. When they become the practicing engineer, they completely ignore that people require the water and the oxygen, and that's where the degradation of the ecosystem happens, and it has been happening in the country since independence. Okay, so now we understood the science part of it. We understood how to manage the ecosystem. Now, if we do not do it, then what is the kind of the mistake we are going to do it? Let us learn from the history. See, if you look at the Easter Island, people went on expanding islands thinking that the land is available. Like Bangalore is, earlier it was 200 square kilometer, it became 700 square kilometer. Like that land was available, they thought that they can go on expanding. But the island died because of the scarcity of water. So you can create the infrastructure, but if there is no water, no human can survive in the system. Similarly, if you look at the last leg of Vijayanagara kingdom, they failed because of the water scarcity. When the invaders invaded the Vijayanagara kingdom, the first thing they did is they hit at the water bodies, and that they removed the lifeline of the region. And also, the last leg of the Vijayanagara kingdom didn't manage the water bodies like the current rulers in the country. So for the last 70 years, we have seen how the water bodies are mismanaged in the country. Okay. So the same mistake was done during the Vijayanagara kingdom. Now let us move to the Bangalore. See, you saw that the plenty of water, and in Bangalore you would have seen that the flooding and tree falling, and the women struggling to earn livelihood. Even 25 rupees to earn per day has become a big issue in Bangalore. So though we call it a Silicon Valley of India. Okay. Now, how to mitigate this environmental thing? Let us understand the nature's principle. Let us maintain the equilibrium in the nature. That is where some of the aspects which I talked about it, the energy and material transition, bioremediation, sustainability. Now to understand the nature's principle. So, I know that Indore has a tag of the clean city. Okay, but let us try to understand from the mother nature. When you look at the mother nature, this the water. If you look at the food chain, this is a food chain you would have studied during your school days. The food is produced by the plants, the primary producers, which is eaten by the next level, the consumers, and that is how the energy and material transaction happens from one level to other. And there is a law of entropy also. There is a loss of energy when there is the material consumption from one level to the other level. Then whatever is left in the system, you see these biodegraders or the bacteria fungi converting into elemental form. That's why in nature there is nothing called waste. Where do you see waste? You will see waste where waste people are there. Who are these waste people? The people who use too much of synthetic material like polythene or a plastic, etc. These are the bunch of jokers who use too much of plastic or synthetic material that are not assimilated by the mother nature. Now going to the hotel to get the food for the children at home, yeah, I would say that we are doing a serious mistake of contaminating the food. Similarly, every day using the bottled water, in a plastic bottle, we are also creating a mess in the system. So we have done the analysis of the food sample and the water sample. We were surprised to see the traces of dioxin in these samples. So that means these dioxins are the carcinogen which introduces cancer in the system. That means when we carry the hard food in a polythene bag to our children at home, we are not giving food to the children, we are giving the cancer to the children. That is a gift of our current generation, doing the greatest injustice to the children. Similarly, when we send the children to the school, we have a fancy idea of giving them a Bisleri bottle. In fact, we are packing the cancerous material in the Bisleri bottle and giving the children every day. So I think we should refrain from that. That's what when you look at the nature, when you learn from nature, you will never do these mistakes. Okay. Now let us try to use the water efficiently. If you have a healthy diet, you are also conserving the water. Now let us understand what is this healthy diet. There are one or two messages I will give, then I will go to the wetlands of Bangalore. Okay. Now, what is a healthy diet? That means if you have more and more pulses in your the food and diversity of food, then you are reducing the water footprint. Now, to understand that, the use of pulses, see, the pulses helps in reducing the weight. The lipid accumulation in the body comes down when you have more and more nutrient in the form of pulses, the protein. It also helps in optimal brain functioning. It is a good source of vitamins and minerals. It helps in preventing cell and gene damage and also aids in digestion and boosts metabolism and controls diabetes and lowers the blood pressure. For you to give an example of how the healthy diet helps in the individual, I'll give an example of one of the person who was a director of the institute. He had blood pressure, sugar because of the occupation, the portfolio he was handling. But after retirement, he changed his food habit. Probably he would have met the person like me. So now, if you look at his food plate, the dinner plate, he has five varieties of vegetable and five varieties of fruit and a bowl of pulses. Five varieties of vegetable and five varieties of fruit. This indicates the diversity, each of 50 to 100 grams. And a bowl of pulses gives the stability. When there is a diversity in your food plate and the stability in your food plate, you will be healthy. Now the gentleman is about 72 or 73 years. He neither have the diabetes nor the blood pressure. So that means one can have a healthy the system by having the healthy diet like this. Now the advantages of having pulses in the system or the vegetables, you need less water. The water footprint for the purpose. So then farmers have to grow more and more pulses if people start eating the pulses. So now let us look at the water footprint for this. See, if you say that pulses, for a kg of pulses to grow, you need 200 liters of water. Whereas the cereals like rice and wheat require 3000 to 5000 liters of water. And also the pulse crop reduces the human-animal conflict. That means in the villages which are infested with the wild animals, it is we should encourage the farmers and we should incentivize the farmers to grow the pulse crop because this pulse crop is not eaten by the animals. So that's how one can reduce the human-animal conflict. But unfortunately, we encourage the people to grow the rice or sugarcane. The wild animals come searching for the crop, and that is where the human-animal conflict and loss of life and property happens. Okay. So now, when you have the healthy diet, you will have the holistic health, and also when you work in an environment like this, you will have the harmonious state of mind, body, and spirit. That's why when you look at the people working with nature, they are all healthy. Okay. Now let me take you to the wetlands of Bangalore. So the wetlands, what are the threats? Let us try to understand. One is unplanned urbanization, loss of flood sinks, the wetlands and trees are the mitigate the floods in the region. We are losing the floodplains and loss of interconnectivity among the water bodies and narrowing drains with concretization. This is the 21st century. Stupid engineers are creating a mess in our system by concretizing the natural drains. I know that I am addressing the civil engineers to drive my message strongly to you all. I am using those strong words. So please take it positively and see that this mistake do not happen in the system, so that at least our farmers and our children will have the water. And also loss of riparian vegetation. That is I have demonstrated how the vegetation helps in the infiltration, and also it reduces shock and aids in the infiltration. Okay. Now let us see how Bangalore was earlier and how Bangalore is today. See, in 1800, the current area of Bangalore is about 740 square kilometer. In this 740 square kilometer, in 1800 we had 1452 water bodies and 82% green cover. Because of that, the temperature in the region was 14 to 16 degrees Celsius during May month. You know, May month is a peak summer, but today, if you look at the temperature, is 34 to 37 degrees Celsius because we have lost the water body. So now 193 lakes today as against 1452 water bodies, and vegetation cover is less than 8%. Okay, and you see wherever the garbage, etc. So, and also for few days in December, the temperature was 0 degrees Celsius. The city, which was a garden city in 73, became a garbage city in 90, and today is a dead city. So now let us try to understand that using the remote sensing data. See, in 1973, you see that 68% is a green cover, the vegetation. Then blue is the water body, red is the buildings, the urban area, yellow is the open space or the agricultural land. So 68% green cover. Then 92 with industries coming up, you see that Koramangala and Peenya, the industrial area industrialization, that those started happening. Then 99 you see that outskirts the IT, BT sector started growing. Then with that intense urbanization started happening, and today, you know, 85% is covered with the building. You see only the building and senseless human beings in Bangalore, and vegetation is only less than 3%. You know, for any region to have adequate oxygen, you need to maintain the green cover of at least 33%. Okay. So now what are the implications? We have lost the vegetation, we have lost the water body. That's what is evident from this. There has been a 55% increase in concrete area from 73 to 2019, and we have lost 88% vegetation and 79% of the water. So that's where I said Bangalore is becoming a dead city. That is what the media carried my article also. Most of the media reported about that study also. So then, so we said that if this trend continues 2025, what is going to happen? 98% of Bangalore would be concretized. That means only 2.5% of the landscape will have the other vegetation and water bodies, etc., which is not acceptable because the city will see, already the city is facing the oxygen deficiency, not because of corona or the COVID. Even without COVID, people were using oxygen cylinders in Bangalore. In the age group of 55 plus, some of my colleagues were using oxygen cylinders in Bangalore. That is the situation we have reached, and of course, scarcity of water is also quite prevalent in Bangalore. Now, let us look at the trees in Bangalore. See, see, every person there should be 7 to 8 trees, but what we have in Bangalore is for 7% 1 tree. So that means let us try to calculate using the remote sensing data how many trees are there. See, now if you look at this Bangalore, these are the wards in Bangalore. This is my campus, IISc campus. Using GPS, we did the ground survey. We identified the trees, and also we registered the trees in the campus. There are 22,000 trees in the campus for a population of 5,000 people. That means for every person there are 4 trees are there. We link that with the remote sensing data. The similar exercise we did for a couple of wards. This is how you can monitor the health of the system. Then using remote sensing data of the better spatial resolution, so we extrapolated for the entire Bangalore. When we did that, see, the Bangalore city has the 1.5 million trees for a population of 9.5 million. That means for every 7% there is a one tree is there. You might ask how many trees each person require. I have said that 7 to 8 trees are required because I'm sure all of you are breathing. I'm also breathing. So when we breathe, we give out a carbon dioxide to an extent of 540 to 980 grams per person per day. That means younger people give 980 grams, 1 kg per person per day, and the elderly people 540 grams per person per day. 1 hectare of tree takes away about 6 to 8 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. So that means we get an equivalent amount of oxygen. By that ratio, for every human being, there should have been 7 to 8 trees. This has been talked about in all the literature. See, if you look at even Quran or Bible, in Bible there is a mention of why nature has to be conserved at least 720 times. in Quran there is a mention about the water pollution. If you to bring awareness among the people, they have introduced a system that if you visit Dargah, you have to wash your feet and fingers with a clean water. That's where in most of the Dargah there are wells in the river, so you need to take out the fresh water and wash your feet. And so the essence of message here is that when you practice that cleanliness there, they thought that the cleanliness, the concept is maintained at home and in the community. So that is, if you look at our literature, it gives a linkage between the children and the trees and the water bodies. If you have a well at home, you are wealthy, you have enough water at home. 10 wells are equal to one lake, 10 lakes are equal to one reservoir, 10 reservoirs are equal to one child, and 10 children are equal to one tree. That means the benefit of having 10 children, you can also have by planting and nurturing a sapling. Okay. Now I'll put it other way: the people who cut the tree. So every tree when they cut, they are murdering their own 10 children. This is a strong the message we get from our scriptures. That is, see, we need to sit and look at these scriptures, understand the messages of the scripture, then we can practice as engineers more efficiently or effectively. Now let us understand what happens if we remove the wetlands and trees in a region. There will be the floods and the water scarcity. See, all these are the experiments we have done over the last 2.5 decades. That is what I am demonstrating, that it is not a theoretical knowledge, it is not done by someone else, it is done by my students and myself in the system. Okay, now see, this is a situation we have reached in some part of the Karnataka where people are struggling for the water. You can see the majority who are affected because of water scarcity are the women. So that is where we need to understand that if we give the clean water, the women are in the country also get a benefit of the sun, so that they can use their time for other purposes, etc. Okay. Now floods in Bangalore is a clear indication of the abuse of wetlands or the lakes in Bangalore. So now these are the some of the things you would have seen. See, we have the bus moving in the water. Okay. So these are the from 2001. There is every year we have the flooding. Every time when flood happens, it also highlights how inefficient the city administrators, including engineers in the system. So that is what is the thing. Why the flooding happens? Because of the loss of interconnectivity among the lake and the too much of concretization in the region. So now let us try to understand the lake. See, every lake has a floodplain. This is the water storage area, and floodplain is the region where the normal rainy season, the water stagnation happens. This is the region we need to protect it or conserve it. But unfortunately, we allow the buildings to come up here in the name of the lake view apartment, river view apartments, and all such illogical thing. As the engineers and as a decision maker, we allow such things to happen in the system. And also, if the developer gives one apartment to us freely, we allow the construction to happen. This is what is happening in Bangalore and many cities in the country also. So now the loss of floodplain is one of the cause. Then the second thing is, the floodplain invariably had the vegetation which used to the shield the region from the shock, reduce the shock, and also it used to help in the infiltration or the water, the groundwater recharge. Now today, the lake rejuvenation in the country, which is given to the civil engineer, they have converted the lake into a cement bowl. They make it as a perfect cement bowl with a jogging path and all. In the process, they have killed the natural entities and they have made the system more dependent on the administration for every year to spend the money. So now you understood this concept through the Western Ghats thing. I will not get into the detail. When there is a vegetation, there is a groundwater recharge and water zone recharge happen. Because of that, you have the water throughout the year. When you concretize it, there is no infiltration. You have water in the lake only for 4 months. Now, see, if you look at the hydrograph, you see that when the vegetation is there in the catchment, you will see large amount of water goes to the underlying layer. Because of that, there is a small amount of water as a overland flow. But when we concretize it, you will see a large amount of water in a short duration as a overland flow. Because of that, flood happens in the region. So now we understood how through the proper watershed management, how we can mitigate the flood and sustain the water in the system. Now, what are the implications? Lakes have become seasonal, groundwater table are declined, and there are changes in local temperature. Okay. Now, our study shows when the lake was there, people are getting water at 80 to 100 feet. After 4 or 5 years, we saw the groundwater table has gone down to 600 feet in that region. And today, after 20 years, I see the groundwater table has gone down to 1900 feet. This is only 4 kilometers from IIC campus. And there is no water in the underground layer. And there are some localities with intense urbanization. You know, the groundwater table is 800 to 1000 feet, and there's a scarcity of water. And 45% of Bangalore depends on the groundwater for the domestic water requirement. Okay. Now let us understand the lakes in the system. When you look at the lake and the vegetation should go hand in hand. Okay. Now these are the mapping of the lakes in the Bangalore. You see that over a last this one there is about 79% of the water bodies we have lost. We know that where the water bodies were denotified and how we have lost the water bodies either for the bus stand or for other purposes. So now let us understand what are the implication of this. See, one is when we remove the lake, naturally we lose the interconnectivity among the lakes. Lakes in Bangalore are interconnected because the topography of Bangalore is undulating. Taking advantage of undulating terrain, our elders have created interconnected water bodies. Way back in 1800, we had 1452 water bodies. Second, the problem we are seeing in Bangalore is narrowing a drain with concretization. To help the builders in the region who have the lake view of the apartment, etc., you know, the drains which were about 80 meters are made to 10 to 12 meters and concretized. So this is how we are killing the system. So the current administration is more interested in making money than they providing the appropriate amenities and facilities to the local residents. So now these are the examples of how this one. If you look at cadastral map, you see that drain is 45 meter. Now it is being reduced to 20 meter in the name of remodeling. And between two lakes, there is a region called a wetland. So these are the wetland which has to be conserved, but the valley zone. So now which are supposed to be no development or no construction zone. But if you see using remote sensing data, Google Earth or Bhuvan, you will see the construction activity or the dense construction activity in this valley zone. So that's where the flooding is happening in the region. Okay, now when you look at the Bangalore topography, it is like a small hillock. You know, the highest point is here. This is the location where my institute is located. Our main gate is 942 meter, which is the highest point in the campus in the Bangalore. So you all know that Indian Institute of Science is the premier institute. It's the #1 institute in the country. We are not just #1 academically. Even the position wise, we are located at the highest point in the Bangalore. And you see that there are three watersheds. There are this one with the interconnected water bodies. So that's this is Shubhavati, this is Hebbal Nagavara, and this is Belandur Agaram, the lake series. Okay. Now, with the interconnected water bodies, you can see the number of lakes. This Ramchandra Hebbal talked about it. I will not talk about the loss of the water bodies in these catchments. Okay. Now, what is more important is the interconnectivity among the water bodies is also lost. See, this kind of analysis you can do using a better spatial resolution data fused with the spectral resolution data, which highlights that there is a loss of interconnectivity among the lakes. The loss of interconnectivity leads to the flooding in the region. Naturally, wherever the interconnectivity is lost, you see the flooding happening. And our study shows that wherever there is a break in interconnectivity, there is an influential politician or the film heroes or heroines sitting on these drains. Okay, that is how every influential section society have abused the landscape in Bangalore and encroached the public properties or the common lands. So now, apart from that, the lake is being contaminated because of the untreated sewage getting into the water body and industrial. See, when the water body receives the pollutant, either the untreated sewage or industrial effluent, there is a change in the chemical integrity, which will affect the food chain also. That is where you see the disappearance of the native species of the fish, etc., in the water body. So this is the food chain in the water body. Any water body, you will have the algae, and the next level is zooplankton, small fish, large fish, and the bird. This constitutes the food chain. When we cover the water body, when we are water body is covered with a macrophyte, because of the too much of nutrient getting into the water body, naturally there won't be sun penetration. You know, in the absence of sunlight, there won't be algae won't grow. Because of that, you will not have zooplankton, the small fish or large fish. That's how it affects the livelihood of the local people. They will not get the fish what they used to get earlier. So now you understood how the groundwater is this one, and apart from that, there is a contamination of groundwater. See, when the lake is polluted, the surrounding groundwater resources, our study shows has higher amount of nitrate and heavy metals. These are all carcinogen, etc. Because of that, there are higher instances of cancer and kidney failure in the city. If you look at my recent paper, what I published about a month back, I have highlighted how the vegetable that is grown out of this water from the lake, or the milk, because the green leaf that grows in the lake goes as a fodder, or the fish in the lake. We analyzed all those samples. We found higher amount of heavy metal. Because of the higher amount of heavy metal, there are kidney failures and the cancer in the city. See, if you look at the data of kidney failure, what was 1 in 1 lakh about 10 years back, today it is 1 in 20,000. That means the number of kidney failures are increasing in the city. See, when we abuse the mother nature, when we pollute the water bodies or the land, we are also getting back that in the form of the heavy metal getting into our food plate through the vegetable or a fish, etc. So now we saw that lakes are polluted and abused. The rainwater harvesting is suboptimal, and there are sewage diversions. Today's civil engineer, they do not even understand that sewage can be treated. It is a resource. They think about diverting the sewage. They want the easy path, and also with the too much of concretization, etc., they can make a big money. So these are not the solutions for the country or for the globe. Now let us try to understand how the lakes are being abused. See, the use for solid waste dumping. People encroach this water body. You will have the lake view apartment, etc. And this lake, one of the biggest lake in Bangalore, receives about 500 million liters of untreated sewage every day. Those who are away also send it through the tanker. So that's how the lake gets polluted and enriched with the nutrients. When the lake is enriched with the nutrients, you see that profuse growth of macrophytes. The moment you see the profuse growth of macrophytes or invasive species, you can also see that there is a lot of enrichment happening in the lake because of the untreated sewage and industrial effluent getting into the water body. The lake which was like this in 90s, the area of this lake is about 900 hectares. Today it is covered with these macrophytes. See, macrophytes are, though they are helping in bioremediation, but we are losing the aquatic food chain, we are losing the fish, etc. So now let us try to understand how the lake behaves. See, when the sewage enters this lake, if it is the small the quantity, by the time when the sewage moves from this point to the outlet, from the inlet to outlet, the treatment happens. When we cross the threshold, then you see that there is the increase in the accumulation of the nutrient and the increase in the nutrient level, and with that you will see the macrophyte going in the system. Now when you look at this chemical parameter which we have monitored, see, when the sewage comes here, the dissolved oxygen is zero in this scenario where there is no the vegetation cover, and at the outlet it is as high as 12 to 14. That means the lake is doing the job. When the lake is covered with a macrophyte like this, you see that at inlet sewage is the DO is 0, at outlet it is 3 to 4. That means the lake has lost its ability to do the remediation which it used to do when we were allowing only a small quantity of sewage from the neighborhood to the. Now the entire city sewage is getting into the system. Okay. Now the implication of that is with the macrophyte cover, you understood that there won't be algae growth because sunlight penetration doesn't happen. Because of that, there is no zooplankton or the fish population comes down. This affects the livelihood of the people because the people in the vicinity are the fishermen, washerwomen, and they are are the farmers. They depend on the lake. Now, how the worth of the lake, if you want to understand the lake when it is in a clean state, the people used to get fish, fodder, etc. to an extent of 10,500 rupees per day per head. This is a study I did in 2007 or 2008. Then in the same catchment, there is another lake which is highly polluted thanks to the distillery industry. If you see the kind of the goods and services it provides is 20 rupees per day per hectare. The most water bodies are sewage fed or the industrial effluent getting into the water body. So that's how it affects the livelihood of the people. They here the farmers and the fishermen are benefited, while here those section of the people are affected. See, they are the one dependent on the nature for their livelihood. They are the one get affected. Unlike where we who sit in the upper areas and we pollute the water bodies. Okay. Now you would have seen these photographs. These are the people thought these are glaciers in Bangalore. They came to Bangalore to take the selfies. Unfortunately, this indicates the polluted state of the Bangalore. The lake, this is a frothing that is happening as it happens in Yamuna in Delhi. Similarly, we also demonstrated, Bangaloreans have demonstrated the coexistence of fire and the water. You see, I have traveled many countries. I have noticed there is a No one demonstrated the coexistence of fire and water. Only the Bangaloreans have demonstrated through polluting the water body. When industrial effluent containing the oil product, etc., naturally that becomes catches the fire. That is where the Lokaयुcta asked me to prepare a report and give the remedial measures. That is where you can see me talking to the local people with my students who are here. So we carried our study, we gave a report to the Lokaयुcta, and now the National Green Tribunal has taken up the issue and has asked the government to rejuvenate the lake. I have the distinction of making sure that the lakes in Bangalore are rejuvenated because of our science input. Okay. Now you see that how the bureaucracy comes up with a remedial measure. See, when the froth was coming to the road, the media and the national and international media have started highlighting that. That to cover up that, the bureaucrats of 21st century, what they did is they just put the barricades. I wrote an article saying that this is an ad hoc measure, this is not going to solve the problem. But though the bureaucrats said that they have solved the problem, they claim that they have solved the problem. But as I predicted, in 4 days, the froth crossed over the thing and still that frothing problem continued. That is why the NGT took this measure strongly and asked the government to do the rejuvenation of the lake or the restoration of the lake. See, in the process, the Babus in Bangalore have spent 2 crores of rupees. When they spend 2 crores, naturally 40 to 50% they can pocket it. That is the agenda of the bureaucrats of the Bangalore or any part of the country or in the globe. Their agenda is to loot as much as possible when they are in the service. Unfortunately, those are the people also get the cancer and such diseases after their retirement. Then they start repenting for their action when they are supposed to do the social service, the kind of the havoc they have created by mismanaging the natural resources. Okay. Now you understood how the heavy metal get into the system. So we took the vegetables that are grown in the downstream of the lake and the fish in the lake. See, every unit of pollutant getting into the water body get accumulated into the in the fish 1 million times. This is because of the phenomena of bioaccumulation. See, we collected a fish sample, vegetable sample, and also green the vegetable which grows in the lake. We analyzed all those samples. We found the higher amount of heavy metal. Because of that, kidney failure and cancer instances in Bangalore is increasing. Okay. Now we also looked at the what is the kind of the emission that happens because we also look at the carbon footprint. You see the cities where the public transport is poor, you see higher amount of carbon emission from the transportation sector. So you can see the Greater Bangalore and Hyderabad have the pollution to an extent of 43 to 56%. If you want to bring down the emission, one of the sector you need to address is in addition to the energy sector is the transportation sector. For the first time in the country, we also quantified how much the emission happens if we do not manage the solid waste and the liquid waste properly. It contributes to about 10% of the emission. Okay. Now you understood how the unplanned urbanization led to the loss of ecosystem, enhanced pollutant. So because of that, you see the warming of the earth happening. With the warming of the earth, you will see the changes in climate. See the southern India face a frequent floods and drought situation. And if you have noticed the recent floods that happened in Jammu Kashmir or in northern India, it's a clear indication or the warning of the warming of the earth. So now, so and also you all are wearing the mask. That is because of the one microorganism. One that is the COVID virus. That has, if you look at the COVID virus origin, it has come from the wild. Because of mismanagement of the forest, the virus has got into the human. See, in Karnataka, we have a disease called monkey fever. That is termed as a monkey fever because the monkey is a carrier of that virus. See, when the monkey started coming to the human habitations, so we saw this more and more instances of the monkey fever. Why did the monkeys started coming to the human habitation? When the forests were degraded and converted to monoculture plantation, monkeys stopped getting the food or the water. In search of food and water, they started coming to the human habitation. When they came to the human habitation, the ticks on monkey's body got detached and it started biting the humans. In the process, the virus in the tick got into the human. That's how every year there has been a death of 200 to 300 people in this region every year. So the same analogy holds good for the COVID. We call these diseases as a zoonotic diseases. See, one microorganism has made everyone to shut our mouth and sit indoors. Even today we are wearing the mask, etc. So that is how we are respecting the mother nature now. For abusing the mother nature, today we have to wear the mask and mask ourselves, our misdeeds is the thing. So now let us try to understand if the change in climate happens, how the human race will, whether human race will survive. Now you all know frogs. Frogs are also known as amphibian because it has a two stages in the life cycle. The first stage is a tadpole stage or a juvenile stage. You know that is in the water. The second stage is adult stage that is on the land. Because of the two stages in the life cycle on the water and the land, the frogs are known as amphibians. Now, if there are no water, what will happen to the frog? Naturally, the tadpole cannot survive. In the process, the frog has to disappear or die. Now, in this particular species of frog, Philatus leucorhinus, in the Western Ghats, we noticed that after fertilization of the egg, we saw in 14 days the younger ones were emerging out, bypassing the tadpole stage. That means this frog has learned how to bypass the tadpole stage to come over the water scarcity. See, for the tadpole stage, it requires the water. So it is like a fish-like creature. So it requires the water. Now, if the water is not there, naturally the tadpole cannot survive. But this animal has learned how to bypass the tadpole stage, and the younger ones emerges out. When my student reported this, I asked him to get those fertilized eggs to my lab, to the Bangalore. When we got it, we monitored and we saw the 14th day the younger ones emerging out. So now this is very important from ecological and evolutionary point of view, and also the adaptation point of view. I will write it and give to all of you. With the continued mismanagement of natural resources in the globe, we are going to pay the heavy price. And with the changes in climate, the human species will go extinct. It is only this organism would have learned how to continue the progeny, and they will survive. Okay. Now let us try to manage the resources. Now what are the ways of doing it? Rainwater harvesting, which is suboptimal. We can manage that effectively. Reduce reuse of the wastewater and plant native species in the region. Now this is where our intervention also comes to the picture. Now if you look at Bangalore, we receive 750 to 850 millimeter annual rainfall. Because of the GIS, you can also find out the spatial variability. You can see this is the highest rainfall region, and this is a region where IISc is located. This is the lowest rainfall. And if you quantify the amount of water that is available because of the rainfall, this one, you can see that about 15 TMC of water is available because of the rain. Bangalore requires 18 TMC of water. That means 70% of the water required for Bangaloreans are available in the form of the rainwater. That means the rain god is giving us enough water which meets the 70% of water requirement. Now, how to catch this rainwater? There are two ways of doing it. One is through the lakes. You can rejuvenate the lake and retain the rainwater. In the process, groundwater will not get contaminated. Second is the rooftop harvesting. In some other cities in the country, because of the mandatory requirement, they have gone for the rooftop harvesting. When they do that, every house will have 3 to 4 months of additional water there for their use. Okay. Now we understood there is enough water in the region, 15 TMC of water for in a place where 18 TMC of water is required. TMC is 1000 million cubic feet. Okay. Now we have the rainfall, we have the water of 15 TMC. If we are using 18 TMC of water, you are also generating a wastewater of 18 TMC. If we treat that, we have a 16 TMC of water. That is where we need to rejuvenate the lake, and here is the thing we integrate. I designed the constructed wetland here which has the ability to remove the nutrient and heavy metal, and it does the treatment at tertiary level. That means when this water is treated 18, we get 16 TMC of water. That means 14 TMC because of rainwater harvesting and 16 TMC because of the wastewater treatment. That means in the region where the 18 TMC of water is required, we have a surplus situation of 30 or 31 TMC of water. For this to happen, we have a 5R formula. This report is available online. Those who are interested can go through that. The first R is a responsible citizen. When people are responsible, they will rejuvenate the lake so that I can retain the rainwater in the lake. Otherwise, they will dump the sewage, they will dump the solid waste into the lake if they are not responsible. So then I can retain the rainwater, and also they will allow the recycling or reuse of the wastewater. So these are the 5 R's practice. If we follow, then we can ensure the water sustenance in the region. So now these are the 193 water bodies in Bangalore. My students have monitored all the water bodies. These are the students who have worked on the lakes of Bangalore. We have the distinction of monitoring each and every lake in Bangalore over the last 1 decade. Okay. Now let us try to understand how do we monitor the ecosystem and how did the lake water quality was monitored. I will take you to the next slide where the Bellador and Varthu Lake. Because of our work, now the lake is also being rejuvenated. You know, our the title of the report is Rejuvenation Blueprint of Bangalore, Belandur and Vattur Lake. We said that these are our agenda: optimal rainwater harvesting through functional lake, no sewage diversion. We need to treat the lake. They treat the sewage and let the treated sewage into the lake, something similar to Jakkur Lake, which will have the constructed wetland and algal pond. And we need to do the desilting of the lake and also make sure that functional ETPs in the industries, and we should make the custodian with the financial and management autonomy with no politician interference, so that we can ensure the sustenance in the management. Okay, and we should have the resident welfare association to manage this lake with involving all stakeholders. Okay, now these are the this one the current problem and what is the recommendation. This I have highlighted the thing summarized in the earlier slide. This is the major value. So I am talking about these two lakes, Belandur and Vattur Lake. This is about 900 acres and this is about 550 acres. Okay. So these are the catchment that receives the lake. See, when you talk about rejuvenation lake, you should keep in mind that the pollutant from this lake should not come to the thing. That means you need to treat the sewage entering this lake before you take up the rejuvenation. We have been successful in doing that. So now this is the lake, this is the catchment of the lake, and we have looked at what are the lakes which are there, what is the health of the lake in these two lake catchment. Okay, then we looked at the what is the catchment area and what is the buffer zone for the lake and what are the kinds of the illegal activity that has happened over a period of time, whether the enforcement has happened. We have mapped those things. So then we went to the field and for the first time in the country, Army has supported our work. They came to us, they have provided a boat and the soldiers also took part in monitoring the lake. Okay. So now if you see how the urbanization happened in the catchment, you can see how the green catchment has converted into the red over a period of time. So this is in the Vattur Lake catchment. And we did the bathymetry study. As you all understand, bathymetry gives the depth of the thing. Because the army people are there with us, we using the sonometer, we measure the depth of the thing. See, we have the historical depth from the topographic map of the Survey of India and the current depth because of the monitoring of the sun. So from this we got the current depth. When you take a difference of these two, it gives the amount of silt that has accumulated in the lake, which has to be removed so that the lake rejuvenation can happen. The accumulated silt will have the nutrient and also the heavy metal. That is where the silt has to be removed. Earlier, farmers used to take out the silt and use it for the agricultural land, and there were not much industrial the effluent getting into the lake. But today it is also enriched with the heavy metal from the industry. Okay. Now we understood how the depth profile is assessed, and this gives the earlier historical depth and the current depth, and this gives the amount of sediment that has accumulated in the lake. If you look at this, we have quantified what is the volume of this one. We have about 11 million cubic meters of silt accumulated in the lake. See, when I started talking about the amount of silt that is there in the lake, people started saying, oh, this is a mega thing, it cannot be removed and the traffic problem will be there. And what is the worth of the silt? To demonstrate that, what we did is we did the water quality and the silt quality assessment. These are the locations where we collected the water sample. We looked at the various parameters like dissolved oxygen, COD, chemical oxygen demand, BOD, then the depth of the water, etc. So that gives us, especially you can assess the thing. This is how the monitoring of the lake is done, not one or two points and then come up with one scientific paper. Okay. Then similarly the pH, alkalinity, turbidity, and total hardness, magnesium, calcium, and water temperature. All these are published in the Journal of Environment Management and it's available in ResearchGate. You can download this article and read. Okay. Then similarly electric conductivity and other parameters. Okay. For the other lake, Vattur Lake. Now when you look at the water quality of the Belandur Lake, the similar exercise we did in Belandur Lake, we monitored this lake. We got the profile of the water quality. In addition to that, we looked at the biological parameter. My student collected the biological sample like algae, zooplankton, fish. These are the algal species and the zooplanktons in this one. So this gives the diatoms and cyanophytes and the zooplankton species. And also we map the macrophytes that are there in the lake, because the same macrophyte we want to use it for our constructed wetland. So this is the region where the macrophytes are there. We collected the samples of macrophytes to find out what is the nutrient and heavy metal accumulated in the sun, it gives the amount of the carbon and the nitrogen in the macrophyte. And also we, apart from the sewage coming from the city, these are the local areas where the sewage is entering the lake. We need to arrest this. That means we need to have a decentralized treatment plan to treat this local this one. So we just map these things. See, these are the regions because of the network of schools work with me. Those school children and students, they did help in mapping because we noticed that the builders were not allowing my team to go there. So that's where we made we requested the school teachers and students, they dressed themselves as farmers and they went and did this mapping and collected the vegetation samples also for our analysis. You can see that our analysis, my student and army doing the collection. So then these are the various places we did the lesson where all sewage is coming and who are the people contributing to that. We mapped that. Then we also looked at what are the kind of sediment that is there near sediment thing. Then we came up with what kind of treatment technology one should have. What is the quantum of the sewage that is generated in the region? Okay, these are the various treatment technologies that are there in the country today, and we looked at the relative merits of that and say how much BOD it can remove, COD it can remove the nutrient, etc. Whether it does the tertiary treatment, we did a comparative assessment of the various technology, and also we looked at the electricity requirement and labor cost because for any technology to survive, it has to be the economical. If it's very expensive, the technology will not survive for a longer time because of the economic constraint or the labor constraint. So we did that analysis. Now this gives a comparative assessment. This is all available online in our document. So then we came up with what kind of treatment has to be done. So we said that having SPR, the secondary treatment plant, with the constructed wetland is the best solution for this one. So that is what we have proposed, and that's what government is doing that. Okay, and we analyzed the slush and sediment. We looked at what is the kind of nutrient and heavy metal that is there in the river. That also gives an idea of for what purpose we can use this silt when we do the desilting of the lake. See, when we look at the NPK, you see that worth of the nutrient that is there in the silt is about 11,000 crores in the Belandur lake or the 4,500 crores in the Vartur lake. That means 15,000 crores worth the nutrient rich, the soil which can be used as a fertilizer is sitting in this lake. And there is not much heavy metal in the silt. Okay. And we looked at the, suppose if you do not want to use in agriculture field, if you convert that into a brick, we notice that we can have a worth of 1,100 crore worth of brick from Belantur lake silt and the 600 crore worth there from the Vartur lake. For the first time in the country, a scientific group has come up with this kind of the thing to tell the worth of the cell. And also we looked at the NPK that are there. Suppose if you look at the N that is there in the sun, it can fertilize the agricultural land in Punjab. If you look at P, it can fertilize the agricultural land in Uttar Pradesh. You know, if you look at potash, it can this one in Andhra Pradesh. So that means that is the worth of the thing. That is what we need to tell the administration. Then they will invest. So when I prepared the document, when it went to the National Green Tribunal, the NJT asked the government of Karnataka, and that is where they penalized the government of Karnataka 500 crores, and that money is now being used for the rejuvenation of the lake. Now it's almost 12 months now the lake is getting rejuvenated. So now we also looked at the phosphorus getting into the lake, and you know, that is where if you look at the frothing happening in the lake, it is because of the phosphorus content in the detergent. We all washed the cloth with detergent which has a phosphorus, and also we eat protein because of that N get into the water body. Now the you know, the way back in 90s, the Great Lakes in the Canada and the lakes in US had a similar frothing problem. That is where they brought a restriction on use of the phosphate in detergent. See, when I brought out this thing and I prepared a report, gave it to the government of Karnataka and also the central government. Today, Bureau of Indian Standards has come up with the norms on the phosphate used in the detergent. See, for the first time in the country, there is a restriction in the phosphate also. I hope if it is implemented properly, that last year they brought out that now. So if it is implemented properly by our babus, then we will not have frothing happening in the lakes or in the water bodies. You won't see the froth either in Yamuna or in Belandur in Bangalore. Okay. Now these are the kind of the treatment, we talked about where all the treatment plants can be located in the region. See, for your information, because of the sustained effort and the scientific input, Bangalore has the distinction of having the highest number of treatment plants, the sewage treatment plant in the country. So that way we have been successful, and this particular catchment, 99% of the sewage is being treated. That is the success we noticed because I was a member of the National Green Tribunal Committee. We made sure that these are implemented in the region. So now this is the reason we have suggested to have the SPR with the algal pond and constructed wetland. You know that you all know that treatment of wastewater has a three stages: primary, secondary, tertiary treatment. Primary treatment removes the large particles, secondary treatment will remove the chemical ion, tertiary treatment will remove the nutrient. Now the secondary treatment will remove only the chemical ion, but if you look at the sewage that is coming from the city has the N and P. That means it requires a tertiary treatment. Now to have a tertiary treatment at municipality level is a very expensive affair in terms of electricity and labor. Now in the process what we have done is we have integrated algal module with the constructed wetland which can remove the nutrient and heavy metal to an extent of 90 to 95%. So now this model is being implemented in these lakes now. Okay, the phosphorus in detergent, you know that we emphasized that wise use of phosphorus for prosperity, missed opportunity for Indian industry. So that is where we pushed. Even I went to the industries manufacturing detergent. I have given my presentation to convince them because my way of doing science is to take all the stakeholders along, including the bureaucrats. Though I criticize them, I also try to take them along with when I do the science. So now that's where I said in my report that it is the responsibility of Indian detergent manufacturers to clean up the eutrophic water bodies. I said they also have to be made the party to the treatment this one. That means the rejuvenation of the thing is a massive exercise, requires a lot of money. Then part of the money comes should come from these industries also. So this is where the study, if you see, is a collaborative effort. The local people were part of the thing, and also the army joined hands with my team, and the local school principal and teacher and students of the local schools also took part in this initiative. And we used to have a regular meeting with the local people when we are doing the field work. For the first time in the globe, my group is the one which involved local people even in monitoring. They water quality monitoring, and because of that, schools and colleges taking part in the thing, we had a data over the last 1 decade, which really became a weapon for us to take it forward in the course. Okay, so now you understood how the water quality can be monitored, and this is the report that is available online. You can download that report and you can read that report, so that will give the details of the how the rejuvenation has to be done. Now how one can do it. Now I share some of my the success stories. Wastewater treatment with constructed wetland and algal pond. This I did it in a lake about 10 years back in 2009. See, there was a lake in Bangalore at a place called Jakku. If you look at my publication of 2005, I have analyzed the water sample of this lake and also surrounding bore wells and the open well. All these water samples had a nitrate. Nitrate is a carcinogen which introduces cancer in the system. Now that is where I pushed the government to rejuvenate the lake, and I was in a committee and I made sure that constructed wetland and algal pond is integrated with the SPR secondary treatment plant. So when here the chemical ions are removed, then when it passes through this, you see that there are the nutrient removal happens. Now the lake was rejuvenated in 2010. For the last 10 years, my students have monitored the lake, and there is a removal of N and P and also heavy metal. And this report is available online. Those who are interested in going through this to see the efficacy of the constructed wetland in the treatment, which is a low cost option. Probably the cities like Bhopal, Indore can certainly take up this. And the bureaucrats who are attending this, probably who can take a decision in this regard, certainly will help the local people in getting the water without any nutrients. Today, see, in 2005, there were 25 wells were there. Today, there are 300 wells. Because of my science, I have a satisfaction of giving a clean water to the 300 well users in the locality. Okay. So now, this is the quantity of nutrient that is being removed from the lake. Okay. Then we also involve the people in the management of the thing. See, I have a environmental education program. I've been doing it the day when I got my doctorate and when I joined the institute as a faculty. I have a network of about 42 institutions joining hands with me in regular monitoring of the environment. I also organize a symposium popularly known as Lake Symposium once in 2 years. I have been doing from 98. So the 12th event I organized in the last December 26th to the uniqueness of this event is that the school students also participate. Though it's an international event, the international national experts take part. Even the school students take part and they do the presentation based on their monitoring experiment. And if you can create new lake, that's a wonderful thing. Like some of you, the faculty, I also do the I do the teaching, I do the research, I do the capacity building, and also I do this kind of initiatives. See, some of them have become a role model for the entire country and the globe, and Planet Night is happening. Now to understand the lake, see, this is a lake symposium, the last symposium, the 12th event I organized. You can see the 12th event. The school children take part in this event, okay? So now, rainwater harvesting, native species in the catchment. Now, see, this is a lake in ISC campus. You know, we store 10 lakh liters of water. I stay on my campus, in ISC campus. My family requires 500 liters a day. That means per year I require 1.5 lakh liters of water. But I am storing 10 lakh liters of water here. See, this is what the Indians have to understand. What they consume, if they give back to the nature 10 times that, there won't be a scarcity or poverty in the country or in the globe. So this is a message for every Indian to take this idea forward. Wherever there is opportunity, go back to your village and rejuvenate the lake and see the rainwater is retained. You are in positions now well off. So compared to your the villagers, you can certainly do this initiative. Now this has become an experimental lab for my students, the open laboratory for biofuel and algal study. Not only students are happy with the recreation facility, even we have animals like this. At one end I showed Bangalore is dying, other end I have otter in the campus. You know, otter is there because of the water body. It is a voracious eater of fish. So I do not go and feed fish to this otter. See, when we did the mapping of the biodiversity in the lake, nature has created the see, you see that 2005, you will see me taking measurement here. 2009 onwards, every year the lake looks like this. And this is the algae in the water body. This is zooplankton. This is a fish in the water body and birds in this region. This region has the highest number of bird species. And we have otter and also variety of snakes in this region. See, recently one of my students got a skin of the snake. I asked him to measure because as a researcher, my job is to measure metrics and then analyze. So when he measured, he came and told me the length is 279 centimeters. So then I asked him to find out what is the maximum length reported for that particular species in the country. So when he did the literature review or the data mining, he came up with the thing saying that maximum length is 239 centimeters. The ladies and gentlemen who are listening to me, as I said earlier, my institute is the number one in the country. We are number one academically because of our students. Not only students excel in the campus, even the animals in the campus also excel. That's how it's quite evident. The snake species, which is supposed to be 240 centimeters elsewhere, has attained 279 centimeters. Not only academically, it gives a holistic growth for a system in the system. Now, when I meet people, I also convince the people to take up the nature-friendly initiative. See, this is a region, the Saint was in a region where that region was facing the water scarcity in 2014 and 15, the drought situation. They knew that the problem of the water scarcity. When I was traveling in that region, Dakshin Kannada district or Mangalore in Karnataka, the media carried my travel plan. When the media carried my travel plan, this gentleman came to know about my travel and he just contacted my student. Then he wanted to meet me. When I met him in the evening at 9 o'clock, he listened to me like the way I presented to you all, I presented to him. Then he said that he has a 12 acres of land. Then I told my student, there is a golden opportunity. Let us just take this opportunity. We will do the measurement. Then my student always carry all the equipment that is required for the measurement, including their brain. So the very next day, the Saint took us to his 12 acres land. We did the topography survey. We did the catchment yield analysis, and we found out how much water can be harvested and where is the lowest point. We gave a proposal to him in a May month, and I told that saying that if we implement the water body, when the rain comes in the June, he can harvest about 15 lakh liters of water. As I predicted, when the first showers happened, in the first week he could collect the water. So when I see the success of this is because of the youth. This saint is about 35 plus, and the children are from the Alvas Science and Engineering College, and the CEO of Alvas is also young. So because of that, Sangama of youth, we could succeed in that. See, and also I had told this saint to take up the desilting of the lake. There are 32 lakes in his taluk, and when he did the desilting of 2 lakes, as a notional this one, the local people did the desilting of remaining 30 lakes. This year also there was a water scarcity in the district, but this particular taluk did not face a water crisis because of the desilting of the lake and creating a water body is like this in the region. This is a success story which shows that lake rejuvenation can solve the water problem in the country. This is what Jal Shakti Ministry, the people have to understand. General program can be successful only if there is a water in the thing. Otherwise, the tap will carry the contaminated air. So if they want water, this is the kind of the harvesting they have to do it. And also the same took up the greening of the sun. When I saw the success here, see, you can get the message here. My theory here is science, society, culture, and spirituality should go hand in hand in our country. See, what we can do, we can communicate to probably the 1,000 people, but these saints and the spiritual leaders can carry to lakhs of people. That's how the dissemination of the knowledge happens. This can happen, when they go hand in hand, science, culture, spirituality, and so when they go hand in hand, there is a sustenance of natural resources in the region. Now, seeing the success here, I just talked to this gentleman who is the CEO of a big institution in Karnataka. So then next year he created a water body which can store 25 lakh liters, and also they took up the planting of the sapling in the Kashmir. So you can see this is in 2017. When I visited a place in 2018, you can see the greenery with the abundant water there. You can see a smile on our face. Then when I visited in 2019, I saw myself surprised. This gentleman, he was a bachelor when he met me when we created a water body. Immediately after creating water body, within a 6 months, he got a partner, a wonderful partner who takes care of the joint family. This is how the nature rewards the people who does the nature friendly thing. When you give to the nature something, when you give to the society gives the rewards like this. When I visit their family, I am so happy because this girl takes care of the joint family, takes care of his parents and his brother and sister, which is not happening in the cities like Bangalore or in any other city where girls want to have the nuclear family. The first thing after marriage is they'll break the family. So fortunately, this kind of stories will give the hope in the system. Okay, this is another example is how the low cost technology can be have for the treating the thing. See, there is a place called Gokarna which is as famous as the Varanasi or Kashi. Here also Shiva temple is there. There is a pond in the temple which was contaminated for the last 10 years because of the practices there. Local youth approached me, and myself, my student visited the place. We collected a water sample. We noticed the constituent of the water sample. We found that there is a large amount of organic matter getting into the lake because of the practices, religious practices there, which we cannot stop. So then what we did is we had a meeting with the priest. You can see me talking to the priest. We had a kind of a mechanism where the priest agreed to make sure those ritual, this one, the 14th day or anniversary of the person when the departed soul, when they do it, those rice balls and banana, etc., are disposed at this particular location. We named it as Vaikunta, and then the priest job is that when they allow this disposal, the thing, they will collect the 20 or 25 rupees per family. In the process, every day 200 to 250 families perform the ritual. We have the revenue of 20 to 25,000 rupees every month, which is given to NGO. NGO has hired 3 youths. Their job is to do the DVD, and also the excess rice balls from here, they'll take it out and give it to the cattle in the Goshala. So now, you see, here also the self-employment has come, and also Make in India program is working here. In the meanwhile, I also introduced the fish which can eat the rice. So that is our ecological engineering option. So the whatever leftover rice is taken away by the fish, and the youth are removing the major part, and youth have got the job because of our the financial mechanism. And for the last 3 years, the lake which was like this looks like this. The Lord Shiva got the water to the land, but unfortunately that Lord Shiva was taking a bath or Abhisheka every day of contaminated water till he met us. The day when he met us, within a 4 months, we gave the water body like this. So that is the science and the you see the culture when it meets how the society get the benefit. Now the reward is that for the last 2 3 years, whatever the work we have done, it has become quite popular in the country and in the globe. I would say the Lord Shiva must be happy, and his son is also standing in front of him. Both must be happy because of that. We got the rewards from the society and from the institutions. Okay. Now let us think about the mini forest in each ward and in each village. How it helps? It improves the groundwater table, improves the local ecology, helps in carbon sequestration, and reduce the temperature at least by 2 degrees Celsius. See, whenever I do the any program, one of my colleague passed away at the age of 40. So in his remembrance, instead of performing the rituals, what we did is we took up a planting of ficus species in 500 sapling in the campus involving the school children, because he was a good ornithologist. He used to take a classes on birds, etc. So in his memory, we created the thing. Now it's almost 3 years. If you look at that region, it has all the ficus species have survived. That's how whenever I visit the region, I remember him through these plants. Okay. So then, if you come to the campus, you will see this creeper. This is a climber from Western Ghats. When I saw this when I was a student in 90s, I was fascinated by the architecture. I said that I should have it in Bangalore, that too in my campus. I brought the seeds to the campus. I planted these seeds in the 7 places in the campus. Other 7 I have kept in my lab. Those who have any doubts about the thing can do the DNA thing to find out that I am the person who planted the thing. Out of the 7, the only one has survived, that is next to the building where I have been working for the last 2.5 decades. So that means even the plants know who will take care, because I am closer to the plant. My office is here. So that is where these plants used to must have thought that I will take care. So now over the last 2.5 decades, this plant has grown so wide, like my profile also, and see the size of the thing. Now when you visit this region, you get a feel of the rainforest. Okay. Now in front of this building, we created a mini forest. 49 native species, 500 sapling in a region dominated by a Parthenium in a 2 hectares area we planted way back in 90s. One of the things my group has done is we also monitor the groundwater table. Groundwater table which was 150 feet earlier in 90s. Today I have the water table at 5 to 10 feet, which demonstrates that if we have the vegetation or native vegetative species, we also enhances the groundwater recharge capability, because in this region soil microbes are diverse and they have made the soil permeable or the porous. Because of that, the recharge happens. These are the kinds of scientific experiment one can do while teaching in the class also. And temperature is also 2 degrees lower, and we have also demonstrated there is a the if you want, you can download my article on land surface temperature and linkage with the vessel on the mini forest. Okay. And this region has a varieties of fauna like slender loris animals. You can see these 4 families of this which were there in other part of Bangalore. Because of urbanization, they have moved to my forest and they are residing in the family. This is how we have enhanced the groundwater table in the region. So those who want more details can go to this website. You can get the details. So my message here is conserve or perish. So we are sensitizing the youth. As I said earlier, I give a talk into many institutions, the schools and colleges. Probably I was the one who has given the maximum number of talks for the last 2.5 decades. I have a credit of giving a 2,000 talks in various institutions. If you have wanted, you can download my talk, which are available in digital form. 15 minutes, the TED talks are available. If you want to get a full idea, the 2 hours talk also could be there. Devanshi, after my talk, please share this recorded version so that I'll put it on the web. Okay. So then,
Surely.
this is how when we go to the school, we do the orientation program for the children, and also I make sure wherever I visit, I do the planting of the sapling with the head of the institution. And in the rural areas, the children do the mapping of the biodiversity in the village. That's how we do the capacity building. And the children come for the orientation program. After preparing biodiversity register, they come for the thing. And those who have done well, we invite them for the lake symposium. Now the urban children do the carbon mapping. They monitor the carbon. So the 2 years when they monitor the biomass, they can also quantify the carbon. Similarly, wherever the lakes are there, school children do the catchment mapping and also the water quality assessment. Wherever lakes are there, if the schools are there in the vicinity, I make sure that the school children take part in this kind of lake monitoring. The children have been trained by my student. You can also see the school teach in the program. Then children go and collect the sample. They come to the lab. I noticed that earlier the rural school didn't have the water testing laboratories, even though the curriculum requires it. That's where I set up the water testing laboratories in these schools so that the children can do the water testing. My idea is that when children are equipped with the knowledge of water contamination, they will never allow the water pollution to happen in the system. That's how whenever I get award, if it carries a cash, then it goes for setting up the labs or rejuvenating the lake, etc. So now the children's, these are the sketches drawn by the children. Similarly, I offer a course for the people working in industries and universities and government institutions. This is the 18th session. I have organized the event on the environmental management. This is in addition to my regular teaching of 2 courses per year. I've been doing it. So as a teacher, if there is a will, there is a way. That is how you can do the capacity building. So you get the details of all these things in my web page, and you can write to me at this if you have any doubt. These are the portal where you get my publications, say either the ResearchGate or the Google Scholar. See, when you access my web page, you get all the details here, including the Lake Symposium Water Testing Research paper. If you click here, you get all my publications. The PDFs are available. It's organized team-wise. If you look at this, the mini forest in IISc and the lake in IISc, all are archived here. Then similarly, the water bodies, the water quality monitoring, the publications are available. Western Ghat, the details are available. Bioremediation is available. Those who are interested can download, read this so that you become a sensible the practitioner in the system. My agenda is to sensitize the system. When people become sensible, I'm sure they become responsible. The country requires a sensible and responsible people, not the people who are just criticize the system. So we want the people to solve the problem. The people can solve the problem only when they become responsible. Otherwise, they will creep against the system. They think only about their incentives, etc. They never think about giving something to the society. So this is a glimpse of the Lake Symposium, and this is IISc campus, and this is a young batch which works with me. About 30 of them work with me. When they do a good science, we contribute to the society, and that's how there is a smile on everybody's face. Thank you very much for listening to me. I was given a time from 12 to 1:30. Now it is almost closer to 1:30. If there are questions, I would be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an inspirational session and an eye-opening one that we can definitely conserve our society, that human actions can directly depends upon directly relate to the health of the ecosystem, and not only that, that lake conservation can also solve the problem of water scarcity. It was wonderful interacting with you, sir, and you have already introduced yourself, but let me
Yeah, that is what I
just two
said.
minutes,
Okay.
just 2 minutes. I would like to even add to the introduction. Professor T.V. Ramachandra is a professor at Center for Ecological Sciences. He is the coordinator for Energy and Wetlands Research Group, the Center for Ecological Sciences, which is at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And he is a member of various groups, authorities like the Karnataka State Wetland Authority, Karnataka State Audit Advisory Committee, Western Ghats Task Force of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, National Green Tribunal, Bangalore, and as already mentioned by him, he has a website which you can refer, and he has n number of awards like the Johnny Biosphere Award for Ecology and Environment, the Satish Dhawan Young Scientist Award, the Envis Award, the Namma Bangalorean Award, Rotary Exemplars Award, the Karnataka State Parisara Award, the Khadri Achuthan Memorial Samvahan Award, Research Advisor at the Nanyang Academy of Sciences, Singapore, Eminent Engineer, Institute of Engineers, Karnataka, and he features in the top 2 scientists of the world. Along with that, his research interests are in aquatic ecosystems, biodiversity, ecological modeling, and which evident he has already explicitly explained in his talk the areas which he is interested into working, like the environmental engineering, education, and research, with over 328 research publications in reputed journals, 69 book chapters, 332 papers in the international and national symposium, 19 books, and so many talks which he has featured, more than 2,000 talks rather. With his publication, Milking Diatoms for Energy is seminal work in biofuel research, which is evident from reports in Scientific American, BBC, and so on. He has guided 152 students for master's dissertations and 17 for doctoral degrees, and he teaches course on various environmental aspects like the environmental management, the principles of GIS and remote sensing for master's and doctoral students. I am deeply indebted to you, sir, that you agreed and accepted my request, and the presentation was so mesmerizing that I think I still am into that phase, and I request if the participants have any questions. From my side, it was overwhelming, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So, if participants would like to interact or if they have any questions. So I cannot see any question in the chat box as of now, but in case in future if I have, I'll definitely divert it to you, and I shall be in touch, and I hope to be see you in person sometime in the future, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you all.